Welcome back to Capitol Tonight. Our political analysts in with us now, Democrat Harold Cook and Republican Ted DeLisi. We just heard from Julian Reed about former Governor Mark White, and a lot of people paying their respects to him today, obviously with the funeral going on, but a lot of talk about bipartisanship under him. Harold, how do you remember the former governor?
Well, that's how I remember the former governor, and that's how, frankly, I remember most governors of that era. And up until, frankly, relatively recently. Look, I mean, back then, politicians had this crazy idea that they were elected to get things done and move things forward, and they didn't care much who they asked to help as long as they could get some help. The education fight being first among them, where Mark White elicited the help of Ross Perot, who is not a Democrat, and then also involved Tom Lewis, who is most definitely a strong Republican, and together they all built House Bill 72 at great political danger to Mark White. Did he care? No, he didn't care, because it was the right direction to go. So look, I mean, and that's not unique to Mark White. I mean, I remember as recently as a few years ago when Rick Perry elicited the help of John Sharp for a touchy tax deal. That used to be the way things were done, and I think Mark White was one of the ones who really set the tone in thinking, you know what, this is going to be politically risky, but it needs to happen, and I'm going to lead it, and maybe it'll hurt me, and maybe it won't, but it's the right thing to do. And you know what? Sadly, it did hurt him. He was defeated in the next election over that very piece of legislation, but it was good legislation.
And Lucy Baines Johnson alluding to that as well, but just some of the people there, President George W. Bush obviously giving a eulogy there, former Governor Rick Perry also in attendance, Governor Abbott. A lot of show bipartisanship even at this.
It was. I mean, you have to think back that we've had some giants of Texas politics. We've had people like Governor Richards and big personalities, Governor Perry, and Mark White may not go down as the biggest personality, but I think his tenure and it does say something about a leader when decades later we're talking about a specific piece of legislation, right? And I can't say that I was, really a participant in Texas politics when House Bill 72 was signed. I was a part of the public education system, when it was signed, and everyone knew what no pass, no play meant when it was signed and when that was implemented. And so the idea that you were kind of challenging the norm of Texas football or of Texas sports, and we were going to put academics first. Looking back on it now, it was politically perilous, and I think that's one of the things that you're out there is that you want your political leaders to chart a path. It may be perilous, it may be right, it may be wrong, but you want them to use their political capital to move the state forward in the direction that they think is best.
Speaking of moving the state forward, the special session that is just days away from ending. Still, no bill has made it to the governor's desk. That could change very quickly. But what's your take on just the strategy to the end now?
Honestly, I think the strategy to the end, between now and the end, is pass the sunset scheduling bill, because that's the main reason they're there. And then pass maybe one or two other bills. I think probably some form of the tax rollback bill will get through. It'll probably be a modest form of it. If the calendar rule vote goes the way I expect it to tomorrow in the House. And then everything else fails. And let me just connect this for a second to Mark White. We were just talking about Mark White after the big education bill passed. And remember, that bill also had a big tax bill that went with it. The tax bill was to pay for low-income class sizes and giving teachers a pay raise. Mark White addressed a joint session of the legislature and said, in your next election, if you get picked on for voting for this tax bill, blame me. That was then. I guarantee you, after the special election, the special session is over, all the state leaders are going to be saying, we didn't get anything done, blame everybody except me. And it's going to be the opposite thing. I bet you anything, Dan Patrick is going to be blaming Joe Straus. I don't even know who the governor is going to be blaming. But, I mean, everybody's going to be pointing a finger elsewhere because this session, with the exception of the reason that they're there, the sunset bill, is going to be a giant waste of time.
Big blame game ahead.
This is like kind of one of those classic things where I'm not going to answer the question you asked. I'm going to give you the answer I want to give. And here's the answer that I would tell to any member of the legislature who is about to face the voters in March of next year or in November of next year. In my opinion, conservatives and individuals who are running for re-election need 4 things out of this session. You need a sunset bill. You need some sort of property tax reform bill, and that can take various capacities. You need to understand that retired teachers are a powerful political force in this state, and that shoring up retired teacher health care is probably a good political move. And then here's the 4th one. There are these certain districts that have been receiving certain money when they cut your property tax, so-called ASETAR districts, or additional state aid for tax relief. If somehow between now and the next couple of years you have teacher layoffs or even school district closures, that's a political disaster for Governor Abbott or for anyone down the ballot. And in my mind, even if you can do 4 of those things, you don't have to do a lot more than that. You may have some other things happen. We saw the annexation bill die on the floor of the House on a point of order. But if those 4 things and maybe a couple other things get done, I think you can count the special session as a success and move on and make your case to the voters in the fall and next year.
Time is ticking. We'll have you guys back next week and we'll see what actually does get done. Thank you very much. That is going to do it for this edition of Capitol Tonight. Join us tomorrow as we continue to remember former Governor Mark White. You will lie in state at the Capitol from noon to 3. We'll have special coverage, including guests joining us during that time to pay tribute to the former governor. Plus, at 7, the latest on the special session as the House tackles the must-pass sunset bill needed to keep several state agencies open. We're back tomorrow. Until then, thanks for watching. Have a great night.